Hello and welcome to Clearance Rate, a full wrap-up of the nation's residential property sales over the last week. And Melbourne has posted a strong week of demand, pushing its clearance rate above trend. But do stay tuned to find out what that means for prices. Sydney, meantime, returning a pretty consistent result in line with what we've seen so far this year. Capital city clearance rates for you at a glance now. And you can see from the numbers that Sydney market clocking a preliminary clearance rate of 71.7%. That compares to around 67.3% last week. In Melbourne, a clearance rate of 69.6% has been recorded, compared to 62.4% last week. In Brisbane, 44.7% of auctions have been cleared, compared to 37.3% last week. And Adelaide recording a clearance rate of 50%. In Perth, that rate dropping to 25%. Private house sales over the last 7 days, and as you can see that private treaty price for houses up around the median price for Sydney, $752,500. So that number continuing to climb there. 2,080 sales. Melbourne boasting 2,064 sales, pushing its median price to just over $500,000. Also in Brisbane, 1,031, 460,000 for the median price there. Adelaide, 443 sales over the 7 days, pushing its median house price sale to $419,000. In Perth, quite a lot of sales going through over the last week, 863, again seeing that median price pretty much second in place to Sydney at $535,000. On the apartment front, we are seeing Sydney sales just at 1,179 for the week. That median price really still pushing closer and closer to $600,000. Melbourne, 755 sales, pushing the price to $447,500. In Brisbane, 197, and Adelaide, 113 sales, crossing the line, taking its median apartment price to $310,750. And of course, all the way across the other side of the country, 211 apartment sales for Perth for the 7 days, 428 the median price there. And a look at how the weekend's buying has influenced home prices across the capital cities. We're seeing Sydney's weekly change up 0.2%, pushing that annual rate to 16%. Melbourne, though, just pulling off a little bit, 0.5% slower there at 8.7% for the year. Brisbane a gain of 0.3%, Adelaide just shifting slightly into negative territory, and Perth at 1.2%, lifting its annual change to 4.9%. And to put all of those numbers into context, New South Wales real estate editor Tim McIntyre.
Thanks, Maura. And what we're seeing at the moment is just a really busy spring in most of the major capital cities. It has been described by RP Data's housing market specialist Robert LaRocca as more like a spring market than winter in some of those capitals. Melbourne, for example, has had a big increase in auction clearances, but the interesting thing about Melbourne is while it's still slightly up on last year this time, it's lost its fast start to this year in a big way. We saw like early stages of the year Melbourne shoot up over the first 3 months by about 5% growth, and it's now negative growth for the year. So it's all been downhill from there, and even has even gone backwards by about 3% this month. Sydney, on the other hand, has just had its first negative month in about a year and a half after having a very strong performance for the last, well, essentially 18 months. Now, though, it's just steadied the ship a little bit, climbing back slightly, and still plenty of demand there. Auction numbers way up on this time last year. It looks like the buying season is going to go right through into spring once again. And Perth is the only other city to move upwards after a sort of coming down pretty hard from the mining boom in the recent times. It's now starting to find its feet and bottom out. I think maybe a little bit of a bounce from hitting the bottom of the market for Perth.
All right, Tim, thanks so much. Well, time to take us through your best buys of the week. What have you got for us this week?
Well, interestingly, first of all, we've got this apartment in Cremorne Point in Sydney. This sold for $620,000. It's only one bedroom, and what we've seen lately is a big increase in one bedroom properties selling for decent money and also renting for a lot of money.
That's what I was going to say. The rent return on a one-bedroom apartment in Sydney's CBD or inner city area is really high, so it really justifies that high sales price or auction price, doesn't it?
Well, it just makes it easier to pay these things off. It used to be in vogue to get a two-bedroom apartment because it would have more growth potential and more rent as well, but now relatively low numbers for big city apartments, and you can get some good rent, which means you won't be paying that much extra yourself.
And of course, anything for sale that does have a picture or a view of that Sydney harbour, you're going to be paying a premium for, right?
Yeah, that's right. The harbour view does add a lot to the equation. And the other one we've got is this interestingly happened. It was a deceased estate with 4 properties all in the same street, in Edward Street, North Sydney. There was 2 bungalow houses and also 2 small unit blocks which went for sale, and they collectively fetched just shy of 10 million for all 4 properties, so a big return for that family.
And so obviously the family was happy to break up the properties and see all of them sold off individually, and they were thrilled with the overall result.
Well, absolutely. There's pretty much no better time than now to sell them, and that overall result was massive, really.
All right, well that is all we have time for. See you next week.